Hi, this is Ian Desher, author of William Shakespeare's Star Wars, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi. With Dan Z, this is the podcast you're looking for.
Hello. Yes, I'm glad you're here.
There? No. You're gonna fall and smash all the bones in your body.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
not doing this stupid baby fight with you.
Just imagine. What if there were a place where you didn't have to divvy up your take because your take never ran out?
What? Probably thought it would be more exciting to save someone's life. Anyway, thanks, Jedi.
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
Hello, friends, and Happy New Year. Of course, if you're listening to this years later, you'll be like, what? That doesn't apply. But it applies when we're recording this morning, January 2nd. We're actually recording in the mornings like we did last week. But, of course, when you're hearing this, it's okay because you are part of this conversation. Hello, my name is Dan Zehr, the host of Coffee with Kenobi. And I am here with two wonderful people, two good friends of mine, as we talk about the 6th episode in season 1 of Skeleton Crew. The episode is titled Zero Friends Again. But let's bring in our hosts for this week's episode of Coffee with Kenobi. First, from Teachers in the Dungeon, the baby New Year himself, Tom Gross.
Well, good morning. Good morning. It's good to see you, Dan, and Father Jimmy. Good to see you too, to continue our conversation of Skeleton Crew.
That baby New Year joke that seems so random is actually going to come out in a few weeks for a future episode of Pour-Over. Just wait for that. Also joining us, he was not able to join us last week because this is a very busy time of year, but he is back for us. Fortunately, we're happy to see him. Father Jimmy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be back. As you mentioned, I was rather busy last week with all the Christmas festivities going on at the parish, but I'm glad to actually have a cup of coffee while doing Coffee with Kenobi. So that's a check off the bucket list.
That's pretty great. And I just real quick, were all the toys delivered?
Yes, good. They were.
Good. I have nothing but faith in you, my friend. All right, so Zero Friends again. We're pretty close to the end of this season, and I'm really looking forward to talking about it with the both of you. Tom, give us one word to describe the show, the episode, and overall thoughts.
Yes, my word is split up. So it's the hyphenated version of a word, split up. And one thing that I know from Dungeons and Dragons, and Dan, I know you know this, is you never split the party. Never split the party. It never a good idea. And so, of course, when the children decide that they're going to split up, but as children do, they argue, they bicker, they take sides, and they go their own way. So we see how that plays out. One thing that I was disappointed in this episode is that SM-33 is completely neutralized, and now Jad is on his own, and he also tries to split up the pirates. And you know what? What is a good pirate ship without some surprises? So there are my. That's what I say about Skeleton Crew. Split up.
Okay.
Mate.
And not only in D&D, but of course. The historian Scooby-Doo, he could also tell you don't ever split the party up.
Yes.
Father Jimmy, one word and overall thoughts on Zero Friends Again.
My one word is kind of the opposite, the inverse of Tom's. I said regroup, because they kind of have to regroup themselves. Yes, they split up, but they come back together, and it's a real reset, I feel like, for the group of kids. It's also a bit of a reset for Jad as he goes back to his pirates. He doesn't want to go back to his pirates. That's where he finds himself. But then I feel like for the audience as well, it's a chance for us to regroup. Last week's episode was really good, was rather intense. And this episode also had tension, but it gave us a little bit of a breather to regroup ourselves and to kind of set ourselves ready for these last two episodes.
Okay, I wanted to say my word for this episode was crustaceous, but that I'm not going to do that. My word is actually Bildungsroman. which is one of my favorite literary terms, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. But in literary criticism, that basically means a coming of age story. It comes from the German words "bildung," or however you pronounce that in German, which means education, and Roman, it means novel. And this means there's like a psychological and moral growth to the characters. Gentlemen, I would say this is the most important episode. It cemented things for me, for these characters in the world of Star Wars for the rest of my lifetime. And I think the most important and impactful to me as a fan of popular culture and a literary critic, I guess, if I am such a thing. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So let's dig in. We'll go in different order. Father Jimmy, kick it off for us. The first thing you'd like to talk about for this episode.
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd like to talk about was the sudden kind of argument that popped up amongst the kids once they landed. I was a little surprised by that. I thought it was a bit sudden. I probably because I wanted them to stay together. I don't want them to split up because as Tom and Dan, you were saying it, that never leads to good things. But I thought it was an interesting split, the way that they kind of got into this little argument and then they split up, and they split up in a way that really allowed us to see their growth, because they weren't with their original duos. They split the duos as well, which was a great opportunity to show the growth of the characters.
Sure. Interesting. Tom, want to weigh in on that at all, or do you want
I
to
do.
jump in? Okay, go ahead.
I thought that was one of my points that I'd marked that I wanted to talk about. So thank you for bringing it up. I thought that, what that argument highlighted was there was a couple like grief or beefs, I guess, that I didn't really see, but then once it was mentioned, I did, and that was that of KB saying that she never listens. I don't feel like I can share what I want to share with her. And so that was sort of new to me. And then Wim and Neil, I'm not quite sure where the strife between them. I'm not sure that was there a strife between the two of them, or did they just choose sides between KB and Fern? I'm not sure.
There was no strife, I don't think. I think it was just like
so they just chose opposites. They just chose opposite sides.
Yeah, Wim strikes me as someone who doesn't want anyone to be by themselves.
Okay, yeah. And so what I thought was great about this split up, once it sort of played its way through, was how they both changed. Both Fern and KB grew in this. And you see that at the very end, as a good children's story, it becomes very apparent and clear at the end what, where the problems were. But it was cool the way in which they learned, and that was especially Fern's, because Neil goes with Fern and they're climbing this ladder on this cliff, and the rungs are just a little too far for Neil, and he's complaining to her like, you can go fast, your spidery long legs can do it, but I cannot. And so she has to problem solve, and this is the second time in, I guess, 3 episodes. It was 2 episodes ago where she problem solved and remembered that you can shut down or override a droid by tricking it. And here she sees the rope and she problem solves. And so it's growth in her, and realizing that I have to listen to others to know why A, someone can't keep up, or B, someone's not understanding my point of view. And then on KB's side, it was a marvelous moment when her servos all freeze up, and Wim has to fix the servos, and he has no idea what he's doing. And so she realizes, I have to share with people what I need in order for them to understand my needs and wants and things like that. But probably the most touching thing coming off of that is at the end, once he rebuilds the cylinder. I don't remember what it's called. When he rebuilds that for her, she says, "Thank you, Jedi." And oh my gosh, the tears, like I was holding back because it was a full room when I was watching it. I did not want to go that way, but it was such a touching moment when Wim realizes that being a Jedi isn't all about adventure. Being a Jedi is about helping people. And so I thought that was so cool. But all of that comes from that the bickering, the childlike. What does Fern say to him? I've had enough of this baby fight or whatever. And it just
baby talk, I think.
Baby talk, yeah. It was so condescending and damaging and hurtful. And but so much comes from it.
So I'm glad you brought this up first, Father Jimmy and Tom. I really appreciate your insights because it helps me kind of formulate what I'm thinking about. And that is why when I first saw this buildup of tension, at first I was like, is this forced? Has this been earned? But then I had to think about a couple things. One, these are children. And children process their emotions and express their emotions extremely differently than adults, right? In many ways, they're more emotionally mature. In many ways, because they're more pure. They're not jaded, right? Unless they've gone through some sort of a trauma. And I think they went through a traumatic experience that brought them to this point. They've also formed sort of a family bond, a family dynamic. And we see the power throughout this whole episode of friendship, of compassion, of being a listener more than you are a talker. And I would submit to the two of you and your experiences and mine too. And I'm including myself very much what I'm about to say. Often we are better talkers than we are listeners. Father Jimmy is probably better at it than the both of us. I would certainly assume. But, it's just so easy to give your opinion, right? It's so easy because you think you know the answers, right? Or you just think that you've got things down. Maybe because you want to feel this illusion of control, which very much is Fern's. I think part of what makes Fern tick. And we learn that KB is concerned that she feels inadequate next to Fern, which is surprising in a way because KB has that implant. We don't really know how it works, but we're kind of see a little bit of the technical side of it here. And so you see there's this sort of a rivalry that they have, even though it's not really a rivalry. KB just feels like if I don't always have all the answers, then Fern won't be my friend. And in this fictional world, as often is the case of why I love fiction, it brings to light this beautiful thing of like what it means to have friends and what it means to doubt yourself. And from Fern's perspective, she's like, wait, what? That's what you think I think? No way. I love you. You're my friend. So it becomes earned through the episode. At first, I wasn't sure if it worked. And then it became this thing of beauty. And then when you add on to that, I think it's funny that you both drank your coffee at the exact same time. It was like a coffee, Jinx.
It was a very thoughtful moment.
A very thoughtful moment. And then we've got Wim, like, who helps KB. Like, I love the scene where KB helps Wim get well, heal her. And Wim is, I think, easily the most immature and childlike of the foursome. But he, just that's why my word is building from on, he grows up throughout this process and learns to help, learns that he actually can do something applicable with his hands, with listening, that helps him to help his friend. Where he's not operating from a place of, I want to propel the adventure. And he's never been reckless, just naive and childlike. But in that moment, it's very adult because he is saving KB's life. And wow, I just thought it was fabulous.
100%. I mean, there's so much more I want to say, but I think there's other things to talk about that'll lead to it. But it didn't strike me right away. And I'm kind of with you, Father Jimmy, when you said you didn't want them to fight in that moment. And it did seem sort of out of place. I mean, gosh, Wim just saved them all from from being taken into custody by SM-33, but then here they bounce out of this, and of course their adrenaline is very high.
Mhm.
They've come from that very serious situation, then they're flying through these tubes at a very perilous rate, and then they're expelled into this cold sort of environment. I guess it makes sense that they would come out very agitated and very irritated. And the one thing I wanted to mention as you were talking, Dan, was we were given a preview that this could happen to KB back with the parents in like episode 2, maybe 3. KB's parents, episode 2. They mentioned she's got this, and I don't remember exactly what they said, but we were aware that there's going to be a condition. And speaking of the condition, I do wonder what KB was like before this accident, and I do wonder if we'll ever learn anything more about the accident, or if just knowing who she is now is enough. Probably that's enough, but I wonder if there's a story about the two of them that plays through in this in some way.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I thought it was good. Also, the revelations about KB and kind of her situation. We get to see that the visor isn't just something that like augments her reality, but it's actually necessary for her to live. For a while, I wasn't quite sure. I thought it was just a visor, kind of like the Google glasses or the things that we have out now, but
product
actually,
placement.
Yeah. It's actually necessary for her to function and to survive. And so it gave a bit more of a urgency to her situation. It also gave a lot of depth to her character that I thought was good.
Two things on that. One, when you said that she needs that apparatus to survive, but how does she make that apparatus work? Through friendship. She needs friendship. She needs community. She needs connections to survive, just like human beings. Isn't that beautiful? Like, we're made that way, right? We need those connections. It makes us grow. And building on that, I suddenly realized why the whole tension makes sense. Before they get to that point, they go from this place of luxury and greed, and they plumb the depths. They go deep down into the planet, not into its core, but way down below, and they come through mud. So it's like they're going, metaphorically, they're going through a change from the beautiful parts, or what they think are supposed to be beautiful parts on the surface, through mud and gunk, and they have to look inside themselves, and they have to figure out a way to work together, and they split. Because when you look and explore yourself psychologically, boy, is that hard to do. And many adults still are struggling to do that, which is pretty human. How beautiful is that?
That's amazing.
That's all from Father Jimmy's first point. We're just getting started, friends. We're just getting started. Okay, Tom, you're up.
Oh, let's see. I'm gonna skip from my order, and I'm gonna skip actually to the end of the episode because it ties in really well with what we're talking about right now. I got sort of switched up in my mind on the name of the ship. It is the Onyx Cinder.
Cinder. Yep.
Like I don't know why I was putting a B in there before Cimber. Okay, so the Onyx, I don't know, is a Cimber anything actually?
No. It sounds like it'd be good on toast. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So to jump to that moment where they're in the ship and they're trying to escape from the trash, the monster, the metal monster, the junk monster, and
I have a name for that monster, by the way.
What is the name?
It's a tetanus. TET apostrophe NISS, and it's stop motion by the Tippett Studios. How cool is that?
The hermit crab?
Yeah.
His name Tetanus?
Yep. Because a number of sharp, spiky protrusions the animators kept jabbing themselves on when they were animating this thing. So they were afraid they're going to get tetanus.
Nice. So we're here at the end of the episode after the realization of their wrongdoings and the growth, and they've seen each other. Now they get to work as a team. and they're trying to escape through the onyx cinder from the tetanus, and they have to, right?
Great name. I got that from StarWars.com, by the way.
And so they have to figure out how to fly the ship. So the teamwork is just incredible. KB gets it started because she remembers from watching Jod and SM33. She punches the buttons, and you see Firm look at her with just an admiration, a grin as she's punching the buttons and getting it started. And she says, "This isn't going to be fast enough. I will need to boost the engines." And Neil's like, "Who's going to fly it?" And so she says to Neil, "You flew with SM. You flew for Jod. You can do this. Sit down. Go for it. I'm going to go back." And then Wim decides, "I'm going to go to the guns." And like everybody gets their spot. And you have to remind me, Dan, when you're on the Falcon, the pilot is Han sits on the left when you're looking out the cockpit, correct?
Correct.
So Fern is in the captain's seat, back in the captain's seat, and observing and sort of just watching and directing at one point, and she sees the button as they realize that the tetanus is just it's got its claws into the shell of the onyx cinder. And
like
she looks
fire.
She looks at the button and she says, what if we use this button? And everyone's like, no. SM told us no, never use that. And she does. And wasn't that the most magnificent? I sat there and I just laughed. It was kind of like being on Thunder Mountain Railroad again. As it just was exploding, coming down, I was like, oh my gosh. And my wife looks at me and I look at her and said, I've never seen anything like this before. It is so cool. And as the cinder slides out of this outer shell and it's got the shiny insides, all I could think was, this is so metaphorical of what the children what they just lived through. Their outer shells were exposed and they were seen for what they are, and they had to grow and they had to change. And here the ship does the same thing in a visual way that was just beautiful, dramatic. I don't know what other superlatives you can put in there for that, but it was just, oh my gosh, I've got goosebumps talking about it right now. I just thought that whole moment, because I love the ship. And Dan, you know how I feel about ships when they get a personality. It was so cool to watch this happen. And then they fly away, and you can see what's about to happen. Because I mean, we skipped the whole middle of the episode, which I'm sure we'll get to, but you can kind of see like where things are going in this series now. And it's so exciting at this point.
I got so much to say about that. In fact, it's my first big point. But Father Jimmy, I know you've got something to share.
Yeah, I loved that point too. I loved the ship with the kind of hull detachment. And for me, when they all took their places, that was why I wanted to use the word regroup, because they came back together. They all did their roles, they regrouped, they reset, they all showed how much they've grown throughout this series, and that they are capable. They've learned, they've grown, they can work together, and they really fulfill these roles that at some point they had all doubted themselves at some point, and now they approach it with a confidence. And yes, that symbolism was very clear with the shedding of the shell so they can grow, which, just before that we had all the little trash hermit crabs that they can only grow as big as their shell, and then they shed it and they get another one. So it was a great moment of character growth, and I think it really set the stage, gave me as an audience member great confidence in all of these kids that they can face these challenges now that they're on their own.
This was the thing I was most excited to talk about. The onyx cinder sheds its skin. When I was watching it, I actually said out loud, oh, please shed your skin. Please shed your skin. Because that would be so perfect for this whole thing. And especially when you consider there's that button you're not supposed to push. And that button takes on so many symbolic examples of what it could possibly stand for. SM-33 is a droid. A droid may have a lot of gifts about it, but it's still not organic, right? It is man-made. Just like some of the decisions we make and some of the ways that we live our lives, it doesn't come from a place other than what man thinks. And sometimes that can be stilted. And I'm going to get spiritual here, which I know I'm in good company. But there are things that we are meant for, that we should do, who we are, that go beyond the physical, right? And that notion of, while you're not supposed to push that button, because that's what maybe society wants you to think, you're not supposed to change. You're not supposed to grow. You're supposed to be stagnant, because so much of sometimes our fears create this stagnancy within us as people. And we're not supposed to change or grow, because if you change and you grow and you get better, then it forces people who don't want to change or are not capable of change in that particular moment in their lives, that phase of their lives, then that forces them to look in the mirror too. And so many people have a very hard time doing that. So, because these kids that still have that innocence about them, despite these obstacles they've gone through, it's this beautifully paced moment. This episode directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who continues to deliver excellent Star Wars stories. Fern hits it. Boom. I think it's cool that she is the one who does it, because she was the one who felt like the leader, but she was maybe the most uncertain of all of them. She changes, everything pops. There's this beautiful flares, and there's that shedding of the skin to this beautiful, like going from a duckling to a swan, right? And bursting through and just looking better and more ready for life than before. They've released their excess baggage. The things of the past are not holding them back, and they can shine and rise like a phoenix. Through a lot of metaphor and spirituality into that. But it's one of my favorite moments in storytelling that I've seen in a long time.
Your description of that was much more eloquent than what I was going to say about that button. I was just simply going to say the button was all the things the adults tell you not to do until you're ready. And that, I mean, so good. So good.
I mean, Father Jim, anything on that, or should we move on? Because I think we need to talk about Jod at some point too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've covered it. This was a great moment, for all of them. It was a beautiful point with the shedding the skin, the growing, and that moment of punching that button and having the transformation, the visual as well as the kind of story element of it came to a point.
It's so glorious to rise above the things that hold you back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, the more I think about it, the more I just want to smile. It's just fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. This is a terrific one. Gee, I wonder what I'm going to grade it. Father Jimmy, what's your next one?
Let's see. My next one, it's a small point, and it goes back to the button. But it was the one thing that kind of, and it's not actually within the episode itself, but another, the one down thing that I had.
Okay.
I usually don't watch the episode recap because I think they give away too much, but I had to quickly redo some settings on my Disney Plus, and the start of the recap was them explaining the button. And I was like, oh man, really? Now I know the button's going to be pressed in the episode.
I skipped it.
and I tried to skip it. I didn't get there quick enough, but I sometimes think the recaps give too much away. Mm-hmm. So that was just the only little down thing, and it's not actually the episode itself.
I agree. That's poor production to me. That's like, assume that your audience will remember. Assume that your audience can piece it together and use that connection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can move on to talk about Jod now, if that's
sure. Go ahead.
I thought that was a fun scene, a great opportunity to understand a bit more of the pirate life And we have this very kind of classic greedy pirate introduction of him as he comes up out of the sewers covered in the gold chains and everything. It was very reminiscent
Symbolic.
of yeah, of like in the Goonies when all the kids get caught, they have all the gold on them and they gotta get rid of it all. And it was just very kind of
Probably
a very
homage.
classic kind of scene. Yeah, and so that was a good point. It was good to see Jod actually get trapped again. Reminds me again very kind of Jack Sparrow of him, where he gets captured a lot and figures out a way at least to get to the next step. You know, it was very humorous when he said, "All right, SM-33, attack," and they just shoot him right away, and he was done.
Which is perfectly encapsulates sort of his whims. Like he gets an idea and is quickly shot down, and he has to pivot right away because he's not as powerful as he thinks, but he is a good talker.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel disappointed when he came crawling out of there with all of that? I felt like it was so cheap, like of Jod. I'm like, this is really what, like, this stuff is really what you were most interested in out of all of that down below. I was
That's
just like,
who he is.
Come on. I was like, come on, man. This is really it.
Well, he's willing to let children die for gold.
That is true.
He is the incarnation of greed.
Yeah. I really I enjoyed that moment. But I think my favorite part of the Jod story in this, I'm sorry, was it my turn?
It is your turn.
Okay. I think the part that I really enjoyed the most about Jod was when he's back on the ship in front of, is it Captain Brutus? I always forget.
It is.
Who I think is so much fun, by the way. I know he's supposed to be scary and intimidating, and he is, but I just think he's fun. I love it when he's on because he's got that snarl and
great voice.
Yes. When Jod has first of all, Jod enacts the pirate code, which I'm so fascinated with right now. This whole idea that I've been doing some research on pirates from a totally separate side of this. I love that this is coming up in Star Wars. This idea of pirate code, and that pirates, for their chaos, follow a very strict code, and they abide by it without question. And so here, Jod enacts the pirate code and gets parlay, which is actually historically accurate. It's clear back to the first written pirate code of the Caribbean.
And it's from that Disney movie too. Now, did I say the word parlay in this episode?
No, I added that.
Okay.
From the book of code.
Sure.
So when he starts talking, and his whole persuasion is very fun to see enacted. But what I thought was the coolest part that really made it feel like a pirate show was when he brings the song in and he starts putting the song into it. And I just was like, oh, this is classic pirate story right here. And I just thought it was, I don't know. I don't have much else to say about it other than it just really gave me goosebumps on the side of like, this is a pirate story. And yo ho ho, and it just all felt so good. And the first mate, and then his second in command, the guy with the patch, isn't taken in by the story and is the first one to slug Jod in the gut when Captain Brutus is like, hogwash, this is enough. I've heard enough. Time's up, and shows him and throws him to the threat. But I do like that rather than just throwing him to the airlock, which is awesome. It's not the plank, it's the airlock.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
It is fantastic that he's like, you're going to show us this place, and if it's not there, this is what you get. This is what's waiting for you if those riches and jewels that you were promising us aren't there. And so once again, setting up the end game for us. That was set first before the kids leave in Onyx Cinder for their quest. Oh, just so wonderful.
And the plasma hourglass, like, plasma is like the lifeblood of all of us. It's time,
Yes.
right? Time is the precious thing that we all have. You can, I one of my person I really admire has helped me with the show for years said, you can always make more money. You can't make more time. And Jod is running out of time. Whether plasma is so sacred to him. And I love the fact that he's boiled down to the very core of who he is, or who he portrays himself to be, who he continues to choose to be. You'd like to think there's more to him. We've seen some hints, and it may possibly come to fruition later. But at his core right now, he is all about the money and the greed, the manipulation, the lying. Whereas the children are work best as a community, he works best by himself. He's a loner. And what motivates him is greed, something he can't take with him. And Jod/Jude Law, that monologue, I would have loved to have seen the filming of that monologue. I would put that as one of the best monologues in the history of Star Wars, in the almost 50 years of Star Wars. It is beautifully delivered, beautifully written. When he throws in the music, which is very similar to what you would equate with pirates in the whole notion of that. And I'm assuming, Tom, you're researching pirates for something with Dungeons and Dragons, probably.
Actually, speech team.
Oh, speech team, even better. But they're all about telling stories, right? And this whole episode is about the power of stories. This whole series is. And I just love it. And then the suspense of the fact that some of them bite, and he knows enough to know that while he may not have a lot of human connections, he knows how to connect to people, which is superficial, just like his lust for greed. Because you get the sense he's never going to be satisfied. But he tries to tap into what is the worst of him into the rest of them to manipulate them. Because again, just like the whole thing with the shedding your skin, it's so easy to look at other people instead of trying to fix yourself. And then he gets pressed against the airlock, which is this great, and there's like a little chamber that you have to get to, which we saw in The Mandalorian and all kinds of stuff in science fiction. And it's just so good. It's so good. And I'm glad that Jod takes a back seat, but the scene that he is in, there's two scenes he's in really, but the second one he's in really stand out to desperation, but without perspiration for Jod, because he knows I can manipulate these people. I think I'm the smartest person in the room. And in this instance, he probably is. Brutus suspects it, but Brutus is more like a survivalist, I think, than a higher level intellectual. And he's not stupid, but there's a difference there. And I certainly wouldn't tell Brutus to his face he was stupid, because I would probably be missing an arm.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
I feel pretty good about this. I'm ready for a letter grade, but is there anything else either of you want to bring up before we wrap up?
Just want to circle back real quick to one point that we touched on, and that was when KB, when she compliments Wim, calls him a Jedi. And I think that was just such a beautiful moment, and it really encapsulates getting back to the core of what I think we all know and love and made us really want to be Jedi, was that they're not just Force users, but they're people of good character and good virtue. And especially in contrast to Jod, who we think he's a Jedi in the beginning because they see him use the Force and they call him a Jedi, but he kind of doesn't really say yes or no, and it implies that he is to manipulate them. And we see it's not just the Force that makes someone a Jedi. It's the character, the internal side as well. And I thought that was a small line, but a really important moment that kind of ties it to the larger Star Wars universe.
And an acknowledgement of just those points because of how it makes Wim feel when KB says that. I think that's an excellent point to end this on. Unless Tom has something.
I just had two things, and one of them kind of relates to that as well. And I really thought that as the last episode finished, Jod holding that lightsaber in his hand and he's just eyeballing it. He's no Jedi. The lightsaber plays no role in this next episode in a place where a Jedi would use a lightsaber.
It's discarded right away.
Exactly. And so that really proved to me that he has no connection to the Jedi if he ever did. But probably I'm starting to feel like he did not, because he really didn't know how to use it or hasn't shown any interest in using it other than just the possession of it. And the last thing I just wanted to mention was, and this is just sort of a big picture thing that I've just always been fascinated with ever since reading, the name of A New Dawn, is that there is a big picture of the impact of the Empire on the galaxy, and here we get to see in post-Empire rule that junk is sort of the theme of their, like, what's left over. We see the junk in Force Awakens. Here we see on this planet that junk is just so prevalent and it's a mess and all of that. And that where the Empire was in growth, they were in environmental damage, an environmental threat, as they tore planets apart to build and you have resources. Here, the result of that is just a bunch of junk, and you even have creatures. I appreciated the crab that had the protocol droid leg. That just made me think of C-3PO. I know it wasn't C-3PO, but it just made me think of C-3PO. So that's what I want to finish with, is just the large environmental picture that is left over from the Empire.
And the whole planet, right? The entire planet of Lanupa, the trash crabs, that, the surface is beautiful and shiny and opulent, and then the bottom is just trash. People are wallowing in trash because that stuff leads you towards emptiness, right?
Yeah.
It's just great. It's just so metaphorically great. And I'm just going to go first with my letter grade. I'm giving this an A+, because of the symbolism, because of the metaphor, because of what it says about friendship and community, about what it says to value in life, about the importance of change and growth in spite of people telling you not to. The power of story and communication, and just a good old pirate shanty. It's just so good. The more I talk about it with the both of you, and a lot of these things that I just spout off during the show, I think of these things in the moment when I'm talking to the two of you. So thank you for giving me that moment to shed my skin.
Nice.
You're welcome.
Tom, give us your letter grade and last minute thoughts.
Oh, A+. This is the first one of the whole series. A+. There wasn't a moment that wasn't passing in this where I was really just on the edge of my seat and enjoying it, and it kept my family involved. And I was so proud of my daughter when Bryce Dallas Howard's name came up at the end. She goes, "Oh, she did some Mandalorian episodes." I was just like, "Oh, I'm done."
It's good parenting.
My work is finished. My work is finished. No, it was a masterful episode, and I was not surprised when her name came up as the director of this episode that she had a hand in this part of the story. Just from beginning to end, meaningful on so many levels, and sets up just a wonderful. I can't wait to see what happens in the next 2 episodes.
Hear, hear. Father Jimmy.
Yeah, this was a great conversation, and it definitely upped my grade. Initially, I was kind of waffling between a B+ and an A-. I liked the episode a lot, and it felt like a necessary kind of breather episode after the intensity of the previous one. But the depth that you guys kind of brought out of this really helped me a lot. So I'm going to give it a solid A. And I thought it was a great episode. Like I said, it maybe didn't have the same level of action and intensity as a previous episode, but that's okay. I think an audience gets worn out if it's constantly at a breakneck pace and you don't get a chance to slow down and see the character growth like we did today in this episode, which was very important. And I'm very excited to see where the next 2 episodes go, how they wrap things up, the fate of these characters, and what's to come for them. I'm very excited for.
I am too. Only 2 episodes left, and I have a feeling they're really going to. I think they're really going to land the plane. I really do. I think we're going to get a nice beginning, middle, and end, and I'm thrilled. I am thrilled that the episode 4 wasn't an indicator that we were just going to be stuck on some war-torn world, but it was just part of their growth and part of what their journey was, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate taking this journey with the 2 of you as we explore Skeleton Crew. It's been so much fun. I'm glad we've got 2 more episodes to really dive into this fantastic series. Tom, what's going on in Teachers in the Dungeon in the new year?
Well, we put out what we're doing this year. One of the things that we are really excited about in Teachers in the Dungeon is last year we did creature-focused episodes where we talked about creature groups like humanoids or dragons or giants. This year we are going to do focused episodes on dungeons and dragons. So we will do deep dives, if you will, into famous dungeons and talk about the traps and the workings and what you might find in some of those famous dungeons. And then on the other side of our focus, we will be talking about specific types of dragons, red dragons, chromatic dragons, the new gem dragons. And so we'll be doing some deep dives into lore, what creates these dragons, what drives them, those sorts of things, because as we discovered last year, was dragons are really intimidating to run as a dungeon master. Yes. Because they are so legendary. And so our hope is that our conversations will make them more approachable for a dungeon master to put more dragons into their games.
I never heard of gem dragons from the new Dungeon Master's Guide or what?
They came out in in Fizban's book a couple years ago, and so you have the Emerald Dragon and the Onyx Dragon and things like that, which is a really, really cool addition. Makes a lot of sense. So we're looking forward to taking a deep look at those.
Oh, we look forward to that. And Father Jimmy, in the new year, will things be slowing down for you?
For a little bit. We've gotten through the Christmas festivities. Well, liturgically, we're still in the Christmas season. So it's
February 1st, right?
I think, no, for us, it'll go until the baptism of Christ, which I can't remember. I think that's next Sunday.
Oh, okay.
That's sort of officially when liturgically the Christmas season comes to an end. So things will slow down a little bit, and then they pick back up again for Lent and the Easter season. Easter's a little bit late this year, so I get a bit more of a breather.
3 weeks later, isn't it?
I think so. It's in April this year.
That's
instead
crazy.
Of early March, instead of late March.
A huge thank you to Father Jimmy and Tom Gross for joining me to talk again about Skeleton Crew. What a fun show. I hope you're having as much fun listening to this conversation as we are bringing it to you. Remember, you are part of the conversation. Just go to the CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group, and add your spoiler-free or spoiler-filled thoughts, depending on the posts that I have shared, so you can talk about and share your analysis of Skeleton Crew. This conversation is so much better when you are a part of it. Thank you again so much, and Happy New Year to all of you. I hope you have a wonderful 2025 and that you enjoy this Star Wars conversation that we bring to you each and every week on Coffee with Kenobi. We are on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all those great things. We're just 6 months out from the Disney Wish Coffee with Kenobi and MEI and Mouse Fan Travel Cruise. If you want to get your no cost, no obligation quote, time is running out. Go to coffeewithkenobi.com/Disney Wish for your, again, no cost, no obligation quote. We're going on the Disney Wish. There's so many people that have signed up from all over the world. Imagine going on a Disney cruise, which to me is one of the best Disney experiences I've ever had travel-wise, with so many Star Wars fans from around the world. It's going to be a great, great time, and we hope that you can join us. Again, Happy New Year, everybody. I will see you next time. Remember, this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.